So here you can see a map set out for 2 players. So this is a 3x3 grid, though the rulebook does include, as you see here, other setups for different player counts. You do this with the tiles face down, you rotate them randomly, and then you can turn them over to have a look at what the map looks like. So just give me a second to do that. So here you can see the map flipped over. Sometimes, and actually you can't see this here, you end up with little cul-de-sacs, roads that you can't access to, but that's fine. This setup is supposed to be random. It is a little bit irrelevant, like the houses are say upside down. It's really just to give a random layout of the tiles. Just to say something about roads, these blue lines are roads, and these are kind of blocks. These are houses. And I always think of these drinks on the map as being kind of distributors of drinks. These things will become increasingly important when I explain how customers get to your shops later. There are some other elements of setup. In the 2-player game, you are actually removing some of the billboards. So say number 15, number 16 and number 12 here. Depending on the number of players you have, a certain number of these cards that have this symbol times 1 in the corner will be used. For example, in a 2 and 3 player game, only one of each of these cards. So for instance, we would have one luxuries manager available and one regional manager, but not a second regional manager who would become available in a 4-player game. Same with all the others. One vice president comes out, one brand director, one comes out, etc, etc. Each player chooses to be a restaurant and takes the restaurant tiles. I've chosen to be Gluttony Burgers, and my opponent has chosen to be the Santa Maria Pizza Company. Just take these to one side for now. The smaller chip with that on is turn order marker. Mix them up randomly to start, and they describe turn order to start with. Turn order is actually very important in this game, and there's another way for, in later rounds, determining turn order, but just to start with, we do it randomly. The bank is populated with this paper money, with £50 or $50 even per player. Okay. Each player is given a complete set of these reserve cards, and before the game is even started, they will, without anyone else knowing, assign one of these down, and then when the bank is emptied of money for the first time, the total of the amounts on the various reserve cards will dictate how much goes into it. Also, before I forget, this count on the bottom, each one of the reserve cards has a different number of slots. So this 200 has 1, 2, 3 slots, this 300 has 1, 2, 3, 4 slots. When the bank is repopulated, whichever number of slots occurs the most, so if there's more cards that have 3 on than 4 or than 2, that's the number of slots that your CEO would have in the future. If there's a draw, the higher number wins. So for instance, if there were 2 4s and 2 3s in a 4-player game, the CEO would have 4 slots. I haven't explained what slots mean yet, but just to show you, you get this card to start off with. This is the CEO, this is you. The CEO has the ability every turn to hire a person and has 3 slots, which basically means that you can have 3 people working underneath the CEO. But if, when the bank is broken, reserve cards are played, the most commonly occurring number of slots is 4. Your CEO for the end of the game will have 4 slots, so can have 4 workers working underneath them. Okay, once that's done, you'll allocate your first restaurant. So you'll notice that at the beginning of the game, you actually get 3 restaurant tiles. These tiles are double-sided. This side says coming soon, which indicates a restaurant which you are about to open. There are cards in the game which allow you to open additional restaurants, but to start off with, you'll just start with 1 open restaurant. Now, in turn order, players can put their restaurants onto the board. Now, this is quite an unforgiving game, and you want to get your restaurant placed intelligently from the off. If you end up putting your restaurant in a place where people from houses can't actually reach it, you'll put yourself at a massive disadvantage in the game. Okay, so in turn order, players place restaurants. There's a few rules on this. This little triangle bit in the corner here marks the restaurant's entrance. You can't have two restaurants placed that have entrances on the same tile. This whole piece here is a tile. So for instance, if I place my restaurant there, which would be legal, and the next player could not place their restaurant there because both the entrances are on the same tile. Also, with this, the entrance must be on a road. So the blue lines here are roads. The entrance must be on a road. You couldn't place this like this, with its entrance facing off the board. You can't play your restaurant over a road. It has to be on one of the white spaces, and you also can't place it on top of houses or on top of drinks distributors. So for instance, in this map, a good placement of the house would be somewhere in reach of many of the houses. For instance, this here wouldn't be a terrible placement. Once that person is placed, the next player can place their starting restaurant again. It couldn't go on the same tile. Yeah, it could go like this, however, where part of the restaurant is on the same tile, but the entrance is not. But depending on how you want to play, do you want to get in the other player's face, or do you want to kind of spread out a little bit and place it somewhere else? Here we've set out some milestone cards. I think you're supposed to set them out into separate piles by type, but actually you can just set them out by colour and then dig for them if you want. In the game, whenever someone is the first to do something, for instance, the first to lower their prices, they get a certain milestone card. Or maybe they could be the first person to produce a burger. If no one else in that turn does what it says on the milestone, then the other cards of this type are out of the game and no one else can ever get them. If more than one person acquire them within the same turn, then more than one person can have the ability that the milestone card conveys. I must say, it's really important to bear these in mind during a rules explanation, and just in general. For instance, if you're the first person to market a pizza, you'll get +5 for every pizza sold. Another important one, but also quite strange, is if you are first to throw away food and drink, any food that isn't sold is actually thrown away. You get the ability to store up to 10 items of food in between turns, which is an amazing ability. What these cards are therefore doing is allowing you to customize your play and also to start off with strategy right from the beginning. This doesn't come with the game. This is a laminated sheet, which is actually the back of the player aid. There we go, it's the same thing, back of the player aid. And if you wanted to, you could leave these cards completely off the table and then just circle these on your player aid with a dry white marker, or cross them off as someone else acquires them. So if we look at the player aid here, all these boxes on the left represent employees that you can hire using your CEO right at the beginning of the game. The arrows indicate that this person, who can be hired immediately, can be trained into this person, and say this green person here can be trained into this person. Just to take a look at some of the employee cards, well, you can actually sort them out into a hierarchy to start, or you can just group them by colours. You'll be using your player aid to identify the characters, so you can always just rummage in the pile for them. For instance, this is a card here. The little play symbol in the left-hand corner tells you that this is a kind of basic employee who can be hired straight out by a CEO without any need for training. Their ability here is written on the card. Here's another one. Here, so this is a management trainee. Symbol shows you they can just be hired without training, and this shows that a little bit like the CEO, they can have 2 spaces for cards to be played underneath them. This is a marketing trainee here. Allows you to place a billboard. This is saying again it's a simple employee who can be hired straight out. And this 2 here indicates the range of its ability in placing billboards. I'll discuss range a bit more when we actually talk about marketing. So how is the game actually played? Well, again, the player aid is very useful here. You go through several phases, starting with restructuring. Then you determine turn order, which is here called order of business. Then there's the phase where you do the actions that are on the cards. Dinner time refers to people who are living in houses, if there is demand. leaving and eating at your restaurant. This is how you make money. Payday is where you pay your cards that require a salary. This symbol here is found on cards that require a salary. Marketing campaigns progress, meaning that a campaign which, say, makes a house want to buy hamburgers would place hamburgers onto that house to show that there was demand. And cleanup is where old marketing campaigns are removed, cards would come back into your hand, and then we'd basically reset for the next round. So how does the first phase, which is restructuring, work? Well, you start the game with a CEO card. Okay. And in restructuring, you're basically going to create two piles of cards. One pile of cards is the employees that you want to use this turn, and another pile of cards would be the cards which you're not going to use this turn. So the first thing you do in restructuring is you play down the cards that you wish to play this turn and leave some additional cards out of the round. These cards are said to be at the beach. This is important because, well, why would you want to put cards on the beach? Well, one, you don't actually need them this turn. They don't fit within your corporate structure, or you wish to train them. Let me show you. Okay, so here, once you've decided which cards you're going to play, and everyone does this in secret, you lay out your corporate structure like this. Okay. The CEO has this symbol here saying 1, 2, 3. What that means is he can have 3 people underneath him. So here I have 3 additional employees. Once you've separated your cards into the ones you want to play and the ones that are at the beach, then laid your corporate structure out, everyone is doing this simultaneously, you can then take the ability shown on the card. For instance, the CEO allows you to hire one person. So for instance, maybe you want a trainer. The trainer has this sort of symbol here again, which means that you can hire them straight out, and that card would join your cards at the beach. Okay. In the first round of the game, it's important to say you'll only have the CEO card, so your turn will actually consist of just acquiring a new card. Okay. Then you would do the actions of the other card. For instance, this is a waitress card. They're important for breaking ties when people are trying to decide which restaurant they're going to eat at during the dinner time phase, but they also give you 3 cash. The marketing trainee allows you to initiate a marketing campaign, and the management trainee basically just provides you another 2 slots to play people into your corporate structure. So for instance, if we were to take another turn using the same cards, we'd start off again by deciding which cards are going to be at the beach. This time we're only going to play 1 at the beach. Yeah? Then we decide which cards we're going to play, which are there, and simultaneously we build our corporate structure. The CEO can have 3 people even underneath him. Management trainee from before can actually have 2, so now my structure would look like this. So again, once you show your corporate structure, you do the actions enabled on the cards. For instance, we haven't seen this card before. This is a recruiting girl, which allows you to hire 1 person. This means on 1 turn, say this was your structure, you can actually hire 2 people. Your CEO allows you to hire a person, and the recruiting girl allows you to hire 1 person. This is a trainer who enables you to train 1 person. What that means is, if you look at the sheet again, is that some of these basic cards, for instance, the kitchen trainee, can actually be trained into one of 2 options, either a burger cook or a pizza cook. So say we wanted to do that, the person we want to train has to be at the beach. And here we have a kitchen trainee at the beach. We'd like to train him into a burger cook because that card gives you more food. So we take the kitchen trainee, we put them back into the pile of available employees. We take the burger cook and we stick them at the beach. Once you've done all your actions and other players have done their actions in turn order, we take these cards back into our hand, go through the other rounds, and then play again. Just to say something about turn order. Now at the beginning of the game, turn order was done randomly. Turn order in later rounds is done by the number of available slots that the person has within their corporate structure. To explain. Here we have the ability to have 5 slots. 3 for the CEO, 2 for the management trainee. In this structure we have decided here not to use the 2 associated with the management trainee. This gives us 2 available slots. Now say the other players had 1 available slot, and say it was a 3-player game, the other one had no available slots. 2 available slots would be the most, which would give me first choice on turn order. This means that I can pick to go first, second or third. Then the person who has the lower number of slots, say the 1 here, would pick whether they want to go the other 2 remaining slots, and the final person would have no choice. If there is a tie, for instance, if I have 3 available slots and another player also has 3 available slots, preference is given to the person who has a higher placement on current turn order. So if I was currently going first and was tied for the number of slots, I would go first. So, say this was a 3-player game and we've introduced another player marker there onto the thing, and I was first last round, which is I was first last round. Well, this round I have 1 available slot in my corporate structure. What that means is my CEO has 3 slots which are filled, my management trainee has 2, and only 1 of which is filled, so 1 is empty. Now, if for some reason one player had 1 open slot as well and the other had 0, it would mean I was tied for the highest number, but because I went first last round, I get to pick first. What picking basically means is it means I get to pick, do I want to go first, do I want to go second, or do I want to go third? After I've picked, the other player, in the example I've just used, would pick if they wanted to go second or first, and the final person would just get their crumbs from the table and would get whatever was left over. That's how turn order is allocated. It's important to say that, a bit like Power Grid, turn order is incredibly important in this game. Once you have allocated turn order, which is called order of business in the rules, you can do the working phase. And what the working phase means is you basically do the abilities that are on the card. For instance, the CEO lets me hire someone. So for instance, I could hire a card off the first rung here, a waitress, who would go immediately into my at the beach pile to be used next turn. You'll notice I've also got this recruiting girl in my corporate structure who would also let you hire 1 person. She's a very good card to get early on. So for instance, I will just take a pricing manager. Yeah? Again, this is a first rung card as shown by the play symbol. That also would go into my at the beach pile. Now, my trainer can train a card. How this works is you take the cards which are at the beach, you can only train people outside of your corporate structure. I'll take an errand boy, and you'll notice here, an errand boy, which is that card there, has a little arrow, which means it can be trained. So you take the errand boy out of your at the beach pile, and you replace him with the thing he can be trained to, which is a cart operator, which is basically similar, but a bit better, and also gives you some more money. Okay. Finally, I've also got the marketing trainee in my corporate structure. I'll show you how to initiate a marketing campaign in a second. There are some additional cards which I didn't mention. For instance, there's cards like the kitchen trainee who produce food. You'll need to produce food because it's selling food to houses that have a demand for that food, which is what makes you money and enables you to win the game. The kitchen trainee, if in your corporate hierarchy, provides you with either 1 pizza, this is a pizza, or 1 burger, this is a burger. Okay. There are other things in the game as well. There's the drinks. So this is lemonade, that one. This one is Coca-Cola, cola, and this is, it kind of looks like a milk bottle, but this is apparently a beer. Okay. If you did have the kitchen trainee in your corporate structure and you produced a burger, you would get the first burger produced card, but if you weren't able to sell the burger at the end of the turn, unfortunately it would be wasted. Though there actually is a milestone card which says if you're the first person to throw away food, you get a freezer, which gives you the ability to store up to 10 pieces of food actually on the card. This is an errand boy that I've already mentioned. Just like the kitchen trainee, these are cards that can just be hired straight out and have no salary. The play symbol again tells you that these can be hired straight out, and there's no dollar symbol in this corner, so they are free. The errand boy gives you a drink of any type, so you could get a beer, a lemonade, or a Coke. But again, just like the kitchen trainee, if you cannot sell that in that turn, unless you have the milestone which gives the ability to store food, you will be throwing it away. Okay, let's talk about how marketing works. So say you've got a marketing trainee in your corporate hierarchy. This one is the marketing trainee. He has a place symbol, so it can be hired straight out, does not need to be trained. He says place billboard, max duration of 2, and this symbol up in the corner with a 2 in it means he has a range of 2. What does that mean? Well, range basically means anything on the tile that has your restaurant's entrance is called range 0. Any adjacent tile, not diagonals though, is range 1, and any tile further on from that is range 2, 3, etc, etc. Now, in this 2-player setup, range 4 would be a bit pointless. But say this marketeer has a range of 2. So what that means is it means that he goes from the entrance of our restaurant and he can place a billboard here, which is range 0, or up to range 2, which is here. Okay. What do the billboards look like? This is a billboard. Yeah, they have 2 sides. One side which has this infinity symbol on it, which I'll explain in a second, and one side that doesn't. You'll notice they come in actually different sizes. When you place a billboard, you can actually pick which size you want. Why is this important? Well, placing a billboard of a certain size blocks out a certain number of spaces and stops other people from putting marketing into that space. Though, marketing campaigns which aren't infinite marketing campaigns will actually eventually come off the board. Okay, so say we use this marketeer here. It says place billboard, range of 2, max duration 2. This is our restaurant here, and we want to influence this house with our billboard. Well, billboards only influence houses that are next to them. Yeah. So, for instance, if I place this here, which would be quite a good place to place it, this billboard advertisement would influence this house and this house. Okay, but influence it with what? Well, when you place the billboard, you have to make a choice. What is it that you're going to advertise on your billboard? So what are you going to market? You can market pizzas, you can market burgers, you can market Coke, or you can market lemonade and beer. So you've got a lot of choice. Say you wanted to market pizza. What you would do is you have a choice with the card. It says max duration of 2. So say you wanted to run for 1 turn or 2 turn, you place a number of items on it. Say I'm marketing pizza, and I want it to run for 2 turns, so up to the max duration, I can put 2 on there. What that basically means is that during the marketing campaign's phase later on, this billboard will make these 2 houses, because it touches both of them, demand pizza, and one of these markers will come off saying that we're 1 turn closer to that billboard being removed from the game. The marketeer which you used is then placed to one side, and then you find, see if I can find it, the corresponding token that matches this billboard to place onto the marketeer. And I found it. It's a 12, and then I drop that 12 token onto the market trainee. What that basically means is that once this comes off here, when more influence is placed onto these houses, this billboard then has nothing on it. It's not advertising anything, and in which case, in cleanup, it's removed from the game. You go, wow, that's 12. Which marketeer has a 12 on it? You can then now take that back into your hand and play it additionally in the game. What this is supposed to represent is that the market trainee or anyone involved in marketing is tied up in that advertising campaign. Now, this is a kind of entrance level card. See the place symbol, so it has no salary and can be hired straight out. But some of the more advanced marketing cards actually do have a salary, and in the phase of the game where you pay salaries, any market trainee, even if they're occupied with other work and can't be used for you again, still need to be paid. Just to mention milestones again, I really can't articulate how important milestones are in this game. If you were the first person to actually place a billboard, you would get the first billboard placed milestone, and what that basically gives you the ability to do is you never pay a salary for a marketeer. So this guy here, he doesn't have a salary, but if you trained him up, he may well end up having a salary. This also gives you a thing called eternal marketing, And what that basically means is you take your billboard sign and then you would flip it, yeah, over to the infinity side. That basically means is every turn forever, that billboard is going to be increasing demand for whatever it is you've chosen to market to those houses, yeah? The houses have a hard limit to how many tokens they can actually have on them, which is 3. Some houses later on in the game can be given gardens, which weirdly enough actually increases the ability to have tokens on it from 3 to 5. Okay. So, though it's not really in the rules explanation, you can use marketing in 2 ways. You can use it to create demand for things that you're going to supply yourself, or you can do it to make houses that you can't really even supply their goods want other things. So, you know, you could have another billboard here which was making this house also want beer. And you know that the person who placed this one can only supply pizza, but now they want pizza and beer, which they can't fulfill. And when people go out to dinner, which is the next phase that I will be discussing, they have to have their needs exactly met. So these guys will not be satisfied by just getting 1 pizza. To have their needs met, they want 2 pizzas and a beer, otherwise they won't bother to go out to eat. And the need, which is represented by these tokens on them, will remain. Again, to mention milestones, this eternal marketing milestone could be a good or a bad thing, because it means that that particular billboard is going to be advertising pizza forever. Maybe you wouldn't want it. Also, if you did market pizza for the first time, you would get this milestone here, which gives you £5 for every pizza sold. We'll talk about selling things in a second, but every good, it's kind of weird, I suppose, whether it's pizza, beer, Coke, all the things, they all cost $10. So it's a very simple menu. Everything costs $10. But if you happen to have, say, this milestone, yeah, you would get +5, so you'd actually get 15 for every pizza sold, and not 10. Marketing. So it's not all about billboards. There are other ways of marketing. If you manage to train this marketing trainee using a trainer, you'll notice the bottom says Campaign Manager, which is the type of card you would get instead of it. So if you did train this, this would go back to the reserve of workers, and this would be your new card. This card can place billboards as well as mailboxes. You'll notice that it has a range of 3, which means it can pretty much get most places onto the board. So it leaves your entrance. This is range 0, range 1, range 2, range 3. So this can actually now, in this 2-player game, play billboards and mailboxes anywhere on the board. But you will notice it does have a financial cost. Again, a bit like cost of goods, salaries are always fixed at $5. Okay, let me explain how mailbox campaigns work. So again, you want to start a mailbox marketing campaign. You've got different mailbox tiles with numbers on them, and then you can put these in any legal space. So a bit like placing a restaurant, you can't place it on a house, you can't place it on a road, but you can place it in empty white spaces. Now, it's not a good place to place it. So let's place it here. Okay. The board set out isn't actually tremendously good to demonstrate what a mailbox does. A mailbox, unlike a billboard, doesn't need to be touching a house to influence it. It just has to be in the same space. So for instance, this space here, which I'm tracing a continuous line now, that is a block. So if this mailbox was just put there, it would influence this house being on the same block and this house, yeah? Okay. If you placed one here like that, that would do the same thing as the big billboard did. But if there happened to be another house there, it would influence that as well. And later on, there are cards in the game which do enable you to play extra houses onto the board, but I won't be covering them in this video because you'll find that with some of the smaller rules, the rulebook is very well written. You can look those up very easily. Okay, the antenna or radio campaign, that basically influences every house on the square that it's on and all the ones around it, like that. So in a 2-player game, if you place a radio campaign into the center like that, it will influence every single house onto the board. You can also have plain advertising campaigns, which are placed on the side of the board like that. And that basically says that everything it flies over, it influences with its campaign. These also, any campaign has numbers on the side. When you do that, you find the corresponding token and you place it on the marketeer until the campaign is over to show that that person is busy with that campaign. Okay, so just to recap, what we've done is we've restructured our company by choosing cards to play to the beach or in front of us. We've determined turn order based on the number of available slots. The working phase is just doing what the cards do in turn order. The next stage is perhaps the most important stage, which is the dinner time stage. This is where people in the houses, if there's demand tokens on them, demand tokens being pizza, beer, that kind of thing, will go out to eat. Say the board was laid out as follows. The numbers on the houses indicate which ones have their demand potentially satisfied first. So the only houses on the board with demand tokens are 4 and 8, so we'll start with 4. Now, 4 have a demand for beer and pizza. Now, say that both this player, Gluttony Incorporated, and Santa Maria Pizza Company can both satisfy that need, which means that they both have a pizza and a beer to serve to the person. Well, how do the people decide which house to go to? Well, they will go to a combination of the one which is closest and the one which is cheapest. So, they will go by the shortest route to either of these restaurants. Okay. To get to this restaurant, they have to go, this has a range of 0, a bit like marketing, 1, 2, 3, 4. See if they go different. How 1, 2, 3, 4, the same either way. So you add 4 for the range to the cost of the goods. The goods are £10 each, so that would be 14. The Santa Maria Pizza, however, though, is 1, 2, add 10 is 12. So if they could satisfy the need, they would go there. If, however, the Santa Maria Pizza place couldn't supply the goods, they would choose to go to the higher one. There are some cards in the game which enable you to manipulate the cost of goods. For instance, just pick one here. Here is entry-level hiring. For instance, this is a pricing manager, and she reduces the price of goods at your restaurant. I remember first time I saw that, and I thought, is that a good thing? But actually it is. Because if you say 2 restaurants which are the same range away from a house, how does the people decide where they're going to eat? Well, actually, if you've got lower prices, they'll choose to eat with you, and it's better to make slightly less money than to make no money, okay? Again, this comes back to marketing. So if you can use your marketing to make a house whose demand is about to be satisfied by an opponent now, and you can place some marketing down and change that, well, they can't satisfy any of it. So for instance, if this radio antenna influenced this house to want pizza, beer, and Coke, that's 3 tokens there, so that house can't have any more until it has a garden, and these guys can't satisfy it, and neither can you, well, no one makes any money, which sometimes is a good thing. Naturally, you might have asked, how do you split ties? So for instance, if 2 restaurants can both satisfy a need at the same cost and the same range, it's the place that has the most number of waitresses is in play. This helps you win ties. They also give you $3 worth of cash every turn. So if you have 3 in play, you get $9. If you play the first, you get a milestone. Most things in this game are like that. They help you win ties. If at that point, say, you both have 2 waitresses, so it's still tied, person highest in turn order wins. Finally, before we move on from the dinner time phase, if a house happens to have a garden, and I've actually got no gardens on the board here, but this is a garden here, which can be placed on the board using cards that are a bit more expensive and need to be trained. You can have up to 5 tokens on a house that has a garden. God knows why. Also, people who live in a house with a garden will pay double the price for the goods. Though this is doubling of the basic cost, and then you add any bonuses you might have on afterwards. Okay. So after dinner time, which is this phase here, you move on to payday, which is incredibly simple. You just run through all the cards you have, the ones you've got in play and the ones at the beach. If they have this here, cash symbol, you have to spend $5 per card. Some milestones will give you a discount on salaries. If you can't happen to pay for your staff, you'll have to fire them and put them back into the general reserve. Finally, you resolve marketing campaigns. So for instance here, if this marketing campaign, take this off, had a pizza on it, okay, it runs for one more turn. The pizza would then go onto this house, taking up to 3 tokens, which is its limit, being a house without a garden. And the marketing campaign would remain there for the second turn. If this one, say here, was influencing there, had one more turn to run, and was advertising Coca-Cola, that is a radio mast, remember, which influences all houses on the block. You would put that there and take a pizza off there, and that would come off like that. Okay, so marketing happens after dinner time. This is important because it means if you put a marketing campaign down this turn, it's not actually going to change the demand on houses this turn. It will be next turn. So for instance, you won't be able to this turn change the demand for this house, but if you happen to put down a billboard, say, to advertise Coke, after this need had been met, or not, so if it was not met, it would be still there, you'd add in another one. Okay. Once that's finished, you do cleanup, which basically means chucking away any food and drinks that you have, which you haven't sold, unless you're able to store it with a freezer milestone. You will take any campaigns which have no tokens off the board, and you will bring back the marketer who was tied up with that campaign back into your hand. Any milestones which have been awarded this turn will then be taken out of the game. So if I'm the first and no one else does it before the end of the turn, no one else in the game can ever get that milestone. So what the milestones are basically doing is they're customizing the players from the off. This might seem overpowered, but actually you're getting one milestone, I'm doing something else and getting another. But you really have to hit the ground running in this game. So there you go, Food Chain Magnate. That wasn't a completely comprehensive rules explanation, but it was definitely enough to get you started. The rulebook is excellent, so if there's any milestones you don't understand or exactly how a card works, it will be explained in the rules. I really like this game. It's quite a heavy economic game with a high level of player interaction. It's also got an excellent theme and it's actually very fun to play. A few things though, it's very unforgiving of new players, so ideally you play it with people who were equally as good as you. The playing of the reserve cards to dictate how much money goes into the bank the second time it's broken can make the game very variable in length, which if you've allocated enough time is fine, and I can understand how it adds an extra layer of strategic depth, though it may be annoying to think you're sitting down for a 2-hour game, 3-hour game and end up playing over 4 hours, particularly with the higher player counts.